call the regular city council meeting of May 17th, 2023 at 7 p.m. to order. Please stand and join me in the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Allison,
Here.
Tom Baylor,
Here.
Kathy Sherman,
Here.
Casey Kinsman,
Here.
Melina Meyer,
Here.
Ann Schaefer is absent, Kristen Carpenter,
Here.
and Ken Jones.
Here.
That's quorum of council.
The approval of the regular agenda. Any objection to approving? Hearing none, then the agenda will be approved. Disclosures of conflicts of interest and ex parte communications. Hearing none, we'll move along to communications by petitions from visitors. No guest speakers on the list tonight, so audience comments regarding agenda items. Anybody have any comments? Come on up, state your name and address.
Seems like I've been here before. How is everybody?
Good.
Good. Cool. Well, I will I'll keep it really short. So, for the record, my name is Steve Amos. I'm the U.S. Forest Service District Ranger here in Cordova. I'm the residing federal official that's delegated to manage about 2.3 million acres here in Prince William Sound and the Copper River Delta. With less than 20 miles of road, the majority of our operations are boat-based with some aviation resources in support. We currently have 4 ocean-going vessels, of which one of those is in the water year-round to support our local law enforcement efforts and cooperate and collaborate with both city and state officials. We're a multiple-use agency with a motto of caring for the land and serving the people. We support the conservation and preservation of both fish and wildlife species for current and future generations, while promoting subsistence use. We also strive towards that multiple use and promoting recreational opportunities as well as commercial uses. I feel like the chronology outlined within your packets articulate well where we've been, what the current ask is, and what the recommendations are from staff. I would also like to take the opportunity to thank the current city staff who put a lot of effort into navigating the process for a positive solution. So as an end result, I'll be asking for the council's support in improving ordinance 1207 and available for any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other audience comments?
Good evening, Mark Freifel. I'm the 813 Woodland Drive, and I am the terminal manager for Shoreside Petroleum in Cordova. I think the biggest concern that Shoreside Petroleum has is going backwards in the ability to make changes in the harbor. As you know, everybody here pretty much knows that Shoreside has been actively pursuing a floating fuel dock in the community of Cordova. And currently it's on the PIPD grant development for being relatively close to where the Forest Service dock is now. We've been actively trying to put a facility in the harbor and in the community since 2006 when we purchased Orgo Oil. So it's been an ongoing issue or an ongoing want from Shoreside to have a facility that we can safely deliver fuel to the commercial vessels and to the pleasure vessels in the city of Cordova. The concern is if we do a long-term lease for a North Field Development project, where does that put us if we get the PIPD grant? So from a personal perspective, I would say that let's wait until we find out if the grant's given to the city of Cordova, and we can try again and see where we're at, see if we can get something built. All right, thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments on agenda items? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to chairpersons or representatives of boards and commissions. Come on up.
Good evening, David Janka on the board representing the city for Regional Citizens Advisory Council. And 2 weeks ago, during your last board meeting, there was a spring RCAC board meeting in Valdez that I attended. And at that meeting, we got the packet on that Billy Gard report that RCAC funded. A couple of things I wanted to highlight on our meeting. The nice thing about attending the one in Valdez, they do a first one since post-COVID. We got a tour of the terminal, which is really informative. I mean, I've been on site before, but getting the tour and people that answer questions and things was really interesting. There wasn't a lot during the meeting with us on that report of the assessment of risks and safety culture at the Valdez Marine Terminal. The one thing that was important during the meeting, we had the new president of Alyeska speak to us, and he acknowledged the report and found it, said it was very helpful, and he's already established a working group, a task force sort of thing to look at the issues that were raised in that. And there's some pretty significant things. We're seeing complacency come both within Alyeska and the terminal, as well as with the regulatory agencies, and it all comes down to money and staffing is why these things are happened or have happened. But the new president was felt like a breath of fresh air for that was John Kurz, Kurz, and he just really said he's really working toward a safety and incident-free operations, as well as the workers free from, he worded it as emotional damage. I thought that was an interesting way to word it. And otherwise, that report had only recently been sent out. We haven't heard much of anything back. We have the executive director, Donna Shantz, 2 board members, and Billy Gard herself. I think maybe one other person is in DC now doing the tour related to that report, which was pretty significant. We got a real hurrah at the beginning of the meeting. Bill Walker happened to be in town, and he came down and was just so glad to see something like that come from RCAC, because that's why it was really formed. And there's a lot of updates on projects and programs from staff, as well as Alyeska, the shippers, our ex-officio members from SERVS and ADEC, ADNR, U.S. Coast Guard. Many projects continuing, long-term monitoring. There's some sustainable shipping issues, marine invasives, analysis of the property of Alaska North Slope crude oil. I found that very interesting because it's thinning out. There's less of the Prudhoe Bay field going into the pipe and more of other fields, so it isn't quite as heavy a crude as it used to be. But the chemist who did this analysis of the crude oil also said that it is not considered dispersible. I thought that was significant. I hadn't heard anybody say that. I know there's been a lot of controversy with dispersants, but I never heard it go to the point of calling the oil not dispersible. It usually initially breaks it up, but then it comes back together. It doesn't fully disperse it. But there's diminished oversight of the terminal by BLM and Joint Pipeline Office. Was talked about. There's new state regs are dropping the frequency of drills, so that's something we're following quite a bit. There's a lack of continued funding in the spill protection and response monies for the state. That's another one RCAC is lobbying for. Looking at the use, which is significant, I guess, at the terminal, of the CFAS, the forever chemicals, and in foam, firefighting foam, looking at the alternatives for that. One thing that's a little, not sure where it's going to go, looking at some speed limits. Some folks have asked about that for the tankers, and they're seeing some of that on the East Coast. It's mostly for whale strikes. But I'm not sure how far that's going to go, because there's some aspect of it's like a empty tanker coming in in foul weather, has to keep up a certain amount of speed to keep control. And then, of course, if it hits tankers, it could hit ferries. I don't think people here are gonna be interested in a 13-hour ferry ride to Whittier, but that could be in the future. So if you want that, or you want dead whales, I guess, I don't know. It's getting a lot of discussion and following it both on a national level as well as, the only thing we can address is just the tanker traffic and the sound, and we can't address anything else, but heads up on that one to keep an eye out. But if there were any questions on anything else that's had new executive or board members reintroduced, and lots of good information shared at the meeting. And this fall there'll be a meeting in the fall meeting rotates around the communities. It'll be in Homer, and 2025 is Cordova. The fall of 2025 is the Cordova board meeting. So if there are any questions on any of the RCAC stuff or that report.
Anybody have any questions? Thank you for.
Yeah, thank you. It's a real privilege to represent Cordova on the RCAC board. It's a great organization. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other boards here? Oh, Bart,
Long time no see.
yeah.
Barb Jewell, Chair in Cordova School Board. Wanted to come and talk to you about a couple different things. So one is, let me tell you about our health sciences intensive that we hosted this past month. It's part of a career and technical education initiative from the state. They have 4 programs. Cordova hosted the health sciences one here. Instructors from UAA and 13 students came. I think about half were ours and half were from other schools. And Sarah Hottinger really spearheaded this effort to build our school to work pathways and to focus on, and the state is focusing on areas in which we are having shortages. So the first 2 were welding and health sciences. There's a human services, and I forget what the 4th one is, that those are scheduled for December 2023. So we have a number of students participating in those, and we're pretty excited. The students got 2 college credits after completing the week-long 30-hour intensive that included both classroom and hands-on experiences. So we're pretty excited about that. I want to share that with you. Probably you all saw we had a very successful graduation last weekend. All 20 students graduated, 19 of them are already accepted into post-secondary scenarios. And it was a great graduation. Felt like it was back to normal. Even though we did it last year, this one was the real deal. So really good. The other thing I wanted to come and talk to you about is we have had a couple more budget meetings since we all sat together and talked, and had made some revisions and some changes to our budget from what we presented to you a couple weeks ago. Nothing too dramatic, but we are looking at most likely a $680 increase to the BSA, although it looks like it might be outside the BSA and it's going to be the equivalent in a one-time funding. It's not what we would like to see, but it looks like what might happen. So that makes some changes to our budget because we were hoping for at least 800. 1,000 would make us pretty whole. Anything under, we've got some deficits going on. We also, and I think we talked about this a little bit, took a pretty deep dive into salary comparison of what we're paying our paraprofessionals, non-certified employees. And we are on average $3 an hour lower than like-sized districts. I think you heard that from us earlier. Alex talked to some more school districts and put together a salary schedule that looks better, more like other like-sized districts. But that does add an increase to our budget. We also knew that we needed to add some teachers because of the increased number of students at the elementary school and the increased number of both intensive special ed and regular special ed students. But we took some things out. We took our priority 2 and priority 3 items out of our budget. And we asked this, we are drawing down on the student CHASA accounts to assist with some of the activities funding. But it does mean that we're going to do a couple things. One is we're going to approach the city to ask for something closer to $2.13 million in a city contribution. That's still below the cap. And I had notes that I was supposed to bring that Alex gave me, I left him at work, so if I'm a little off on that number, that's me, not him. And we're gonna draw down about $250,000 out of our fund balance. So that's what we're currently considering. We haven't adopted that. The whole board has not approved or adopted that. That's what we're looking at today. Most likely, Alex is gonna put together that package for the budget, for the board to look at next week. I think the process is gonna be that we're gonna have a special meeting to approve the budget. We then submit documents to city council. And when city council gives us an answer, then we adopt a final budget that we present to the state by July 15th. So that's what I got for tonight. Any questions?
And you may not have this information, that's fine. Do you have the min and max for those caps, based on the 680, the?
Okay, so forgive me if I get this wrong,
That's
but
fine.
what we were told the other night at our budget meeting was the max was around 2.33, and the minimum was 1.9? No, that can't be right, 1.3. Does that sound right to you, Helen?
Yeah, the minimum's quite a bit low.
It will be quite low.
Oh, okay, so what do you have for
No,
the?
no, I don't have it. I
Oh.
think the 1.3 sounds more realistic than the 1.9.
Yeah, it's not 1.9, 1.9 was not right, 1.3 is, yeah.
And again, how much do you think you'll be asking?
2.13, I think is, yeah. And that's the cash contribution with the in-kind contribution still being the 139.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. CCMC, anybody representing them?
And you know, there is a student council report. For some reason, I put it in the wrong place. You see it's under number 14, but it does belong at number 4. So there is a written report in the packet. The last one for the year, probably. And then I'm gonna call them on summer vacation.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, council, the consent calendar is before you.
Does anybody want to pull anything, or I'm gonna call the roll on the consent calendar? Okay, here we go on the consent calendar. Casey Kinsman,
Yes.
Ann Schaefer is absent. Ken Jones,
Yes.
Melina Meyer,
Yes.
Tom Baylor,
Yes.
Kristen Carpenter,
Yes.
and Kathy Sherman.
Yes.
The consent calendar is approved.
Okay, in the consent calendar, there is a proclamation that I would like to read into the record this time. City of Cordova, Alaska, proclamation of appreciation to Jeff Gard. I, Mayor David Allison, do hereby issue this proclamation of appreciation to Jeff Gard for his dedication and contributions to the betterment of the city of Cordova while serving as a city council member. Whereas Jeff Gard served on city council from October 1994 through 1996, was elected to serve as city council member more than 20 years later in March 2017, and graciously ran again in 2020 when it became clear that no others were stepping up in service to our community. And whereas at the beginning of his recent 6-year tenure, Jeff Gard helped guide the city through difficult financial decisions as a struggling medical center required several infusions of city resources. And whereas, as revenue sources fluctuated, Jeff Gard was a council member willing to make unpopular votes to balance city budgets, carefully weighing citizen input and concerns of the Cordova business community. And whereas his patient demeanor and discerning nature helped guide Cordova through the stressful COVID-19 pandemic. And whereas Jeff Gard championed important causes such as the comprehensive plan update, fisheries issues, Cordova harbor projects, while prioritizing balance between economic development, cost of living increases, and quality of life improvements for the citizens of Cordova. And whereas at city council meetings, he often communicated his opinion regarding the proficiency of city staff members, which boosted morale. Jeff Gard came to City Hall periodically. He discussed pending issues with the clerk, the manager, and staff, and his presence and active listening skills were noticed and appreciated. Now therefore be it proclaimed that the mayor, city council members, city staff, and citizens of Cordova do hereby express their sincere appreciation to Jeff Garden for his willingness to dedicate many hours of his own time in service to the community as a valued city council member. Jeff? And we all know it couldn't be done without family and support too. Thank you, Doran. Come on up, Jeff, we've got a
Thanks,
little
Jeff.
present for you. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Helen, give it to
Go
him.
ahead.
And that's your proclamation too.
Okay. So am I supposed to open it here?
Sure.
I'll get to see it?
Please, let's have the fun.
So nicely done.
It's not a first fish.
Okay, well, it's not canned fish either.
It's not canned fish.
There we go. We can save the paper. Oh,
Wow.
thank you.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
You bet, thank you. Good
Decorate
luck.
that new house.
Now, if
Thanks, Jeff.
anybody's looking for something to do on days, I got an extra nail belt down at the house.
Yeah.
No, wait, I remember how that goes.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Okay. The minutes were in the consent calendar, bids, none. Reports of officers, mayor's report, I don't have anything new. We had our workshop today, and I still have not heard from the postal service. Well, I touched base with them and they said they were still, at that point in time, they were still making their schedule, so, that's all I know about that. So, any questions? The city manager's report, Helen?
So I don't have a written report, but I do want to give an update. Staff has been very, very busy. First and foremost, we're in the midst of an audit. If you walk out in the hallway, you'll notice a room full of folks who are actively auditing our financial statements. So we'll have a report much earlier than we've had for the last 2 or 3 years, which is excellent for our planning purposes as we head into the FY24 budget season. We started IBEW negotiations last week, and that will be ongoing again with the goal of having a completely ratified document so that when we start putting our budget together, we know what the impacts will be. And of course, council will be involved in approving the compensation and making sure that it fits within the budget. We next week are starting the implementation launch of our new accounting software, so we will have that up and running. It's a process, but we're really excited to have a more robust system that will provide information to all of you as you make financial decisions as well as to staff. So that will be January 1, 24 launch, but we're in the process of putting that in play. The legislative session ends tomorrow. They are actively negotiating. I checked at 5:30, and as Barb Jewel was mentioning, there's a they're negotiating between the Senate budget and the House budget. There's a $680 increase to the base student allocation that has now been converted into a one-time funding boost that will be negotiated next year into some kind of permanent status. They're looking at, again, trying to get the House on board. They're looking at a one-time $500 energy rebate that will be tied to the price of oil. If the price goes up and they can afford to pay it, it will get paid. That's a nod to the House, who wants a $2,700 PFD, and the Senate version is in at $1,300. There's no capital budget, which is kind of a bummer, but the all capital dollars are going to provide match to leverage federal dollars. And so we'll see where that goes. Hopefully with fingers crossed they will end without a special session, but that is still up in the air. And then South Harbor update, I would love for somebody, Colin, do you have anything you want to share?
Sure.
Good evening, everyone. Colin Bronson. Nothing in addition to what's written, but I would open it up for questions. We're still chugging away at the funding elements and the environmental permitting and our design elements. We're pushing back 65% due date just because we want more. We're getting pretty good really good consultation from the folks on our side that are providing guidance in engineering and overall project management. They wanted more out of the 65, so we pushed that deadline into June instead of late May, so that's actually a good thing. We're just getting more, so once we get to 95, it'll be much easier to push that through the goalpost of mid-July. So it doesn't change our overall timeline, and everything's going right according to plan. So the only hang-up we have right now that we know of is the metering for the slips, and that's something that the electricians can figure out, and they're actively working on. But that's our one big design element that's got to be worked through. Everything else is on track and looks really good. For this group and really for the maritime public at large and the community, the one thing I'd stress is that the vessel relocation plan is a big, big priority for us. That's the public reaching side that affects many, many people, and we are trying to get the word out to everyone. We've got some really good outreach and replies so far, but it's very helpful for everyone to understand that this isn't easy. It's about 10 pounds of stuff in a 5-pound can. There's only so much room in North Harbor, and we're doing our best to prioritize folks that are in the South Harbor and really can't move or can't move easily, so that we either get them in the shipyard or we get them in the North Harbor. And so that's going to take some accommodations on folks in the North Harbor to say, hey, if you really don't need to be in the North Harbor through the construction period and you can pull your vessel, that would be very helpful. So it's not just a 1-for-1. Obviously, it's got to be the right mix of slips. If you've got a 50-footer, we need a 50-foot slip in the North Harbor. So it's like 3-dimensional chess right now we're playing. So it's a little complicated, but got to be patient, got to be understanding. It's long-term good for some short-term pain, but we're getting some really good responses. We did our call-outs this week to the last few folks that we hadn't heard from. So we're almost at 100% of knowing exactly what we're going to need and what people want to do. Obviously, those plans change, but we're getting real close. And that's the one thing I would say is like that's the big challenge we've got right now, is just making sure that everybody understands that this isn't perfect. The dates aren't perfect, but we're building a big harbor through an Alaska winter, and every daylight minute we have counts tremendously. So just being understanding and accommodating and doing the best we can. If you can help your neighbor and move your boat out, then that would be appreciated. So that's all I've got for my report, pending any questions.
Question for Colin? Online, any questions for Colin? Doesn't sound like anything to Colin.
Great, thank you.
Colin.
I did have one more thing I forgot. We have a new employee who starts work on Monday. Mimi of the museum is leaving, retiring, and actually moving out of Cordova, great loss. But Ashley Bivens will start work. She is moved here from Haynes, where she was involved with the Bald Eagle Foundation.
Yeah.
And she's got a master's degree in museum science. This is her passion, is working with culture and museums. She's on the board of the Museums Alaska. She's young and dynamic, and we're excited to have her here, and I know she is very happy to be here as well. So she will be someone I'll certainly have, you'll see her at a future meeting, but she'll start work on Monday.
Thank you. Any questions for the manager? Hearing none, then we'll move along to the clerk's report.
But Mimi's here through the end of June, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because she'll stay on as Cordova Center. I guess, okay. So at pending agenda, maybe we'll bring up how sometimes in the summer we cancel the second meeting of the month, so we'll see how people feel about that. We can wait until the first of each meeting of the month to decide that. And we can always fill in with special meetings, which are easier to have, kind of quicker, maybe can be noon type things. The Sheridan Alpine is going to give a report on June 7th, kind of an end of the season report, so they'll be here for that. You guys approved the certification of the roll, the assessment roll, in the consent calendar today, so then the resolution setting the mill rate will be at the June 7th meeting, and I've kind of worked on that already because I knew these numbers would be approved. And if, we'll see how these ordinances go next time, but mill rate setting resolutions require public hearings, and then if these ordinances are up for second reading, we'll probably have a public hearing on the 7th as well, with all those things on it. And that's about it. It's all about the meeting. I guess that's my life.
Okay, any questions for the clerk? Okay, hearing none, the student council's report is in the packet. So moving on to correspondence, we have one agency review notice for Aquatic Farm site. Any comments, questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Do we know if they reached out to CDFU on their side? Do you have any idea on that, Councilmember Jones?
I don't think so.
That's all I have.
Okay, moving on to ordinances and resolutions then. Ordinance 1205, an ordinance of the Council of the City of Cordova, Alaska, amending section 14.24.020 by deleting the definition of vault or rough box and amending 14.24.080C by eliminating the requirement of a vault or rough box, removing reference to vault or rough box, and renumbering the burial requirements accordingly. First reading.
I'll move to adopt ordinance 1205.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Councilmember Kinsman?
No, I think there's enough information here. I guess I don't full, I mean, I kind of looked on my phone what a rough box is, and it seems like that seems appropriate for us to pass that cost on to an individual if they so desire to have a rough box. That's all I have on that.
Okay, Councilmember Sherman?
Yes, I too looked up rough box. And I also know when I began my work with the city in 1993 that the records were kept on folded pieces of cardboard. And I know we've come a long way since then, and I feel that this is probably a good action at this time that could save a lot of people some hassle and money. And I think our cemetery records are in much better shape due to volunteers and MBE and some good surveys, so I feel pretty confident about moving forward with this resolution.
Hey, Councilmember Baylor? Okay, Councilmember Meyer?
I also support it.
Councilmember Carpenter?
I support it too. Thank you.
And Councilmember Schaefer was absent, right?
Correct.
Councilmember Jones?
Yeah, I'll be supporting this.
Okay, sounds like we're ready for a vote.
Okay. Let me do a roll, I
So
think.
one question.
Oh.
Do we, what is the cost of a rough box for us to look at?
We've been
Any idea?
charging $350, but I don't know.
That-
The hospital's been charging us a little bit more than that. but it was in our fee schedule, so
Sure.
over the years, we've discussed upping it, but anyway. They're kind of spendy and they're kind of cumbersome too.
Right. Thank you, that's all I had.
Okay. And we
Okay.
roll call?
Yes, so on first reading of ordinance 1205, Tom Baylor,
Yes.
Casey Kinsman,
Yes.
Ann Schaefer is absent. Kristen Carpenter,
Yes.
Ken Jones,
Yes.
Melina Meyer,
Yes.
and Kathy Sherman.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. Item 17, ordinance 1206, an ordinance of the council of the city of Cordova, Alaska, amending section 14.20.090, containers location by changing the section title to containers placement and by adding the following language. Containers of refuse shall not be placed prior to 6 a.m. on the scheduled pickup day. Here's your first reading.
Mayor Allison,
Yes.
I'd move to approve ordinance 1206.
Been moved, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded, Councilmember Sherman.
Bringing it forward for discussion. I understand the purpose of this. And I had a couple questions. I guess, what is the alternative if you can't get your can out by 6 a.m. on that morning? Can you take it to the baler? And I think I know the answer, but can you just take your garbage to the baler if you don't?
Yes.
Yes.
And you can take it out after 6 a.m.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, thanks, Sam, because this is gonna fall on me. So,
Yeah, it's just not to have it out before.
great, understood. Is this year round? Or can I put my container out when the bears are asleep?
Well, I guess the thing I would say about that, and the way Fish and Game looks at it, is any animal, deer, I don't know where that came from.
Where were you?
Dogs, ravens, you know, they're spewing trash around and then it gets strung around.
And if you have a bear-proof trash can?
Yep, 6 a.m.
Okay. That's all my questions.
Could you clarify, no, we don't pick up trash at 6 a.m., right?
No, we're just trying to give everybody who has to be working 7, 8, you know, a fair opportunity to be able to put their trash out before they need to go to work. But not the Tuesday before the Friday pickup.
Roger that. And they were sharp and on time at 8 a.m. on our street, and I watched them run down the street to pick up trash cans, and I get it. It's just gonna be me.
You can always take it to the baler at 9.
Yeah, they're retired people.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Sam.
Yes, again, to get, I understand the point, I appreciate that. I would like, hopefully, some conversation, I know this is probably more in the volunteer realm, or even some on to, I guess, the native village, to take care of some of our elders who may have an issue with getting some trash out. Hopefully us, as citizens, we can take care of our neighbors and help them out if as needed, to be thinking of that. Is there, I know is there any appropriate kind of housing for a garbage can that is deemed bear-proof? I've seen various structures around town, like a shed or something like that, that the refuse individuals can open a latch and pick it up. Is that appropriate, not appropriate? What is?
Well, I don't think anything's really bear-proof if they
Sure.
want it, you know, so if you're defining it as bear-proof, I would say no.
Okay.
There's really nothing bear-proof, even a bear-proof garbage can, if they spend enough time and energy on it, they may be able to get that
So
open.
I don't even know what you call them, the
Yeah,
sheds, the shacks that I see around town that people keep,
Mhm.
are no longer acceptable for keeping trash in?
Oh, no, you can still put your trash in there, it's just not bear-proof.
Okay,
But
but that's
put it in
acceptable.
at 6 a.m.
oh, so,
not the night before.
okay, so it can't be housed in there all the time, then, perfect.
Yes, sorry, I wasn't getting.
Clarifying point. Okay.
I've seen some pretty stout houses for garbage that have been dismantled pretty quickly by a bear. Yeah, so, okay, let's go down the list here. Councilmember Jones,
Yes.
Councilmember Baylor,
That wasn't the vote.
I'm sorry.
I wasn't
do
even-
you have any comments other than yes?
I'll be supporting it. I'll be taking the vote, sorry.
Councilmember Baylor, any comments, questions?
Yeah, I support the intention of this. I do have a question. Some folks simply have their garbage sitting outside and it gets transported 30 feet to pick up. How is that going to be addressed? Are there going to be any penalties for people who won't do things correctly and bears are being into the trash, let's say 30 feet from pickup site? Where do we draw the line as far as where trash is? Thank you.
I'm not sure I completely got all of that. There is a fine associated with this 6 AM in 1.28. It's $75 a day per day that you are in violation. The 30 feet, I guess I missed what that was, Tom.
Well, some folks just simply have their garbage cans sitting outside the home. It's not in a protected area, and then it's carried to the curbside. So will this rule have to extend to if you just got it sitting up outside in the environment and a bear comes in and trashes it there? Are we asking people to have these things in garages or inside the house? What's the definition of having it available for the bears to eat?
It's right here.
Go ahead,
Yeah, in 14.2.0.090, containers placement, it says that before the time for refuse collection, the customer shall place all containers of refuse for collection in plain view at the same accessible location at the facility no less than 20 feet from the nearest roadway. So reading that, I would think that they're already in violation if they're not moving it within 20 feet.
Yeah, well, I think what he's asking is,
Yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, I think you're saying, if I have my garbage can outside on my porch regularly, and then I move it to the curb at 6 AM, are you saying, is that okay? If I have that garbage can on my porch?
Right, well, that's what I'm saying, because the barrel will get at your porch, it would get at the curb, it doesn't stay where it's at.
Right.
So how far are we gonna take this to keep the bears from getting at our garbage?
Well, I think right now, Fish and Game can ticket somebody if they see the bear or have proof that the bear was on your porch, wherever your trash can is. I'm not sure that this would cover that. I mean, we could amend it if we wanted to do that. I think the overall education and thought is that all trash should be stored inside or taken to the baler if it's not your pickup day and you need to get rid of it. Does that help?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, where are we at? Councilmember Carpenter?
Thank you. Now, my question is, maybe it's a little nitpicky, but in the title of the ordinance, it says containers of refuse shall not be placed by restriction. And then in the third whereas, it says public education efforts have encouraged citizens to refrain from storing trash outside. And the specific language doesn't actually say place outside, it just says place. And I wonder if some people might, you know, be picky enough to say, well, you didn't tell me it had to be outside. Anyways, so I just wonder, is that deliberate to leave out the word outside? Because it certainly occurred that way in a few different instances.
I can answer that one.
Yeah, it's the.
So in, you know, even if the title of the ordinance says that, it's all about what the language of the code will say. And 1420-090 talks about placement, and it talks about, you know, does it say outside? It might not say outside. It says at ground level.
Right at the curb.
No, it says containers for bread shall not be placed prior to 6 a.m.
But in the ordinance on the fourth whereas, it says placed outside.
I mean, I guess we could add the word outside. I think I thought that 1420-090 containers placement was clear enough, and then just adding shall not be placed prior to 6 a.m. on the schedule was clear. But I don't know if you guys want to add.
Okay, well, I just wondered if that was intentional, if somebody could take issue with that, and the way people do sometimes.
I agree.
If y'all want to change, put outside in there, we could do that.
If you want to make an amendment, you
I
can.
have an issue with the wording. I mean, the wording is, the verbiage is essentially the same. We're just adding the 6 a.m. Have we ever had an issue with someone saying, you didn't say outside, so I left it in my garage?
No.
Okay, well, I just wondered if there was an agreement, but we can leave it the way it is, and if we need to come back to it as an incident, then we can do that later. Thanks.
Yeah, well, I think we can consider that, but even if, I don't think that would be a major change anyway, so it doesn't affect our first, second reading thing, so. Councilmember Meyer.
Yeah, I'm in support of it. The only question I had was, it says not prior to 6 a.m., and I don't think this needs a change. I was just curious. What time should residents have their trash out by? What's the window? Like, they should get their trash out between 6 and 8 a.m.?
Well, just any time after 6 a.m.
But
Right.
I think what she's asking is when are they gonna come? I mean,
Well, that's.
they're not gonna come at 6:15.
No, again, that was for people who have to go to work so
Yeah,
that they can put their
right.
trash out before they have to go to work, and, you know, shift work can be 7, 8, 9, whatever. So that's the 6 a.m. The routes are variable depending on timing, the timing of pickup is variable. But the scheduled day is the same every week.
Is there, and maybe, I'm not trying to put words in anyone's mouth, but if you were not to put your trash can out before 10, would you be missed? So that.
I can't answer that. I mean, everybody asks that question,
Yeah,
but
some days.
But
it's variable.
start picking up at no earlier than 8 a.m., correct?
7.
They go to work at 7, they can be on the road as early as 7:30.
Okay.
Typically, they hit a residential area at 8 a.m.-ish. They don't try to get in there before 7:30.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Maureen? Do you think that may be something we would want to, maybe as part of a PR thing, when we communicate this ordinance change, if it passes, we might want to just share that on a typical day, if you don't have your trash out before whatever, 7:30 in the morning, it's hit or miss. You're risking not getting a pickup, potentially. Or, you know, the crews are.
Correct, that's where I was kind of going for.
Yeah, okay, we can do that.
Just for the PR of informing residents, what window is a safe window that they need to get their trash out by. The deadline's kind of nice, but,
Yeah.
you know, it always can vary.
We can do that. Thank you.
I think that was everybody one time. Just if assuming this passes, we'll have a public hearing and the second reading at our next meeting. I just suggest that we do whatever we can to get the word out before that, so that, you know, we're putting a requirement on the public that's gonna have a fine with it. And I just want the most opportunity to comment before, certainly after we need to advertise it real well, but,
Yeah, and I think the intent of this is not for the cops to drive around
Right.
and open garbage
Oh,
can
no.
lids, right? And I think if the intent is to, you know, help stop what happened 2 weeks ago, you know, so it's not a,
yeah,
it's not a producer of revenue out there to do that.
I agree. I did just to comment, we can put it on our newsletter or whatever. So, anyway, okay, anybody else have any last words? on this first reading?
Is that the enforcement then, law enforcement, is it, I'm guessing, like many things in this community, it's kind of neighbor-produced complaints, or it's probably gonna be the.
Well, if there's garbage out of a can and the cops are called, which is typically who gets called when that happens, yeah, they have the authority to ticket. Yeah, if the neighbors wanna call the police department, they have that, right?
Is the, like, staff of the refuse department also enforce, like?
They do not
Okay,
enforce.
I'm just curious.
But they might call
Sure.
complaint, yeah, if they're having issues with garbage at a location or sees bears or whatever.
Yeah, I think when it gets into the height of it, typically, it's, yeah, they could certainly let the police department know.
Thank you.
Any other last words? Can you go to the roll, please, on that?
Okay, so on first reading of 1206, Kathy Sherman,
Yes.
Ken Jones,
Yes.
Casey Kinsman,
Yes.
Kristen Carpenter,
Yes.
Tom Baylor,
Yes.
Melina Meyer.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Okay, thank you. Item 18, ordinance 1207, an ordinance of the council of the city of Cordova, Alaska, authorizing the city manager to enter into a 20-year lease with the United States Forest Service, USFS, for a portion of property described as a roughly 4,500 square foot portion of Lot 3, Block 7A, Tidewater Development Park. First reading. Anybody want to move that?
Mayor Allison,
Yes.
I will move the ordinance 1207 forward, please, for discussion.
Councilmember Sherman made the motion. Is there a second?
Second?
Yes, who's that? Kristen?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Councilmember Sherman?
So I am in favor of this after reading all the documentation and going back through the Harbor Commission minutes and knowing the history of all this. I think we have compromised to a reasonable solution with the 16-month out, allowing us to continue with our harbor progress if need be. And I think it makes the Forest Service very aware of planning for the future, but I think it also gives us a good working partnership as we move forward with our harbor development. So I am in favor of this.
Okay, Councilmember Carpenter?
I will take the easy way out and just say that I echo what Councilmember Berman said, and I'm in support of the resolution.
Okay, Councilmember Jones?
I'm opposed to this, and for a couple different reasons. First, and I think maybe the most important, is that I think a lot of information was left out of this packet that pertains to this lease and the historical timeline seems to be cut off starting in 2019, but this topic has been discussed frequently since all the way back in 2012 in my Harbor Commission tenure. And we have, you know, a harbor master plan that references this area that was not included in the packet. We have a 2015 resolution from the Harbor Commission that was not included in the packet. And we have the 2022 and 2023 PIDP maps that envelop all the planning process that the Harbor Commission has done so far on that area. And those were not included in the packet. And I think that there is really not very much upside for the city in moving this forward at this time. We are waiting to hear back on a grant application. We have a resolution that was just passed at the last Harbor Commission meeting unanimously, requesting that we evaluate potential repair and replacement of the airplane and net mending float, since that float, if it goes away, there will not be a spot to park airplanes in the harbor. And one of the best suitable locations, and I would argue the only location that a dock of that size could be relocated to, is in the footprint that this lease pertains. I sent Susan quite a bit of this information that I'm referencing and requested that it be shared with you guys. However, it didn't make the packet, so for that reason, I would like to make a motion to refer this back to staff and have it brought up in the first October meeting. By then, we will be further along in the harbor project. We'll maybe have heard some rumors about the PIDP application, maybe not quite by then, but more importantly, the fleet will not be out of town, and the majority of the harbor users will be able to weigh in more effectively on this issue if we wait until October. So,
There's a motion to refer to staff until October 2023. Is there a second to that?
I'll second that.
Okay, then moved and seconded to refer to staff. Any discussion on that?
Is it possible for me to make a comment as staff?
Yeah, go ahead.
Where we stand as staff is we put an enormous amount of time into this, and I did have a conversation with Ken earlier today to try to get a better understanding of where he's coming from. I know there's been a lot of history around this, but the current status of this project is based on current realities, current funding opportunities, and current engineering and design recommendations coming from people that city has hired to guide and advise us on how to proceed. First and foremost, I want to be very clear, the PIDP grant does not include an airplane float and a net mending float. It is certainly a desire of people in this community to have those two items. The PIDP grant was eliminated that infrastructure because that grant application did not fund those sorts of improvements. And in fact, if we had included those improvements in the PIDP grant, we would not have been competitive, and we might as well have not applied. So what we presented in our PIDP grant application was very specific to the intentions and the requirements of the grant, the criteria listed by the feds on how to apply for and what successful applications would be. So I just want to be really clear that right now, even if we were to get a nod for a PIDP grant, it would not include funding for a net repair float or an airplane float. Which brings me back to where we stand right now funding-wise. Council has committed, has been asked and did approve a $4 million additional commitment coming out of the permanent fund to pay for South Harbor improvements. We do not have a penny to do any work on a North Harbor improvement that would include a net bending float and a airplane float. That said, we are actively looking for grant opportunities that might fund that kind of infrastructure. And we're certainly not, we're actively looking under every rock, under every pebble. So I just wanted to be really clear about that. And then finally, staff of both the Forest Service and city spent a huge amount of time, and attorneys, spent a huge amount of time coming up with a lease agreement that acknowledged the uncertainty city has around how we're going to proceed with improvements on the north side, how the Forest Service dock may or may not be in the way of improvements, and negotiated a 20-year lease with you very specific, for no reason whatsoever, we can, as can the Forest Service, with 16 months notice, get out of the lease agreement. So we bought ourselves some time, so if we were to get a grant and we were to be able to get funding rolling to do these kinds of improvements, we will have adequate time to get the Forest Service out of the lease and make the improvements that we need to make sure that our harbor is vital and serves the primary users, which is the fishing fleet and community members. So I feel very, very confident that we have accommodated the need for potential improvements. And I also want to just be realistic about the fact that the PIP grant will not cover any of the costs of that infrastructure improvement because it doesn't qualify for the grant funds. So with that, I just wanted to be clear about where we stand.
Okay, just for clarification of one of the comments you made there was that the council committed $4 million from the permanent fund. Council did not commit $4 million from the permanent fund. Council committed $4 million to that budget item, but it was not a permanent fund withdrawal vote.
Excuse me, stand corrected.
And then I guess I have a question on what is the downside of delaying this until October?
Right now, we have the lease expired, what, 2 years ago?
Yeah, 3.
The lease is expired, so we're operating on month to month. We do not get any revenue under the existing lease that is now expired. The new lease is negotiated at $10,000 annually, and we would miss out on that. I think we would also, well, Kevin, you can share what that is. I don't see a downside to not signing this because there's no additional information that we can provide. We have already pretty much exhausted any rationale to moving forward. We've turned over every rock and everything. So what is being considered right now, I know there was concern from Shoreside Petroleum that their infrastructure for a floating fuel dock might be in too close a proximity to the existing infrastructure that the Forest Service has, but I think, Kevin, you can maybe address that.
Yeah, and that was addressed in the preliminary design we did for the grant, but I guess I would just request that the council consider this. If you're going to defer it back to staff, I don't know, I can bring forward everything that Ken wants brought forward. I have no issue with that. I can continue to bring things forward. But at the end of the day, these are two separate items. Should we have a conversation about a net mini float? Yes, we should. Does the Forest Service being in that location have any effect on doing improvements in the future? Under this lease, it does not. We can terminate the lease at any time for any reason. Staff has put a tremendous amount of time and resources into this process. If we're going to defer it back to staff, I think the decision just needs to be, do we just terminate the lease completely? Because realistically, I don't understand what you want to get from that information that would really affect a decision on, do we approve a lease that we can get out of at any time if we want to do improvements? Not even if we want to do improvements, it's just at any time. So I would need some guidance on what it is you want for those documents. So,
Comments on the motion to refer?
She had her hand up first.
Councilmember Sherman?
I will not be voting in favor to delay. I think there is no rationale to delay. I think I agree completely with what Kevin just said. This lease is the best thing that we can do right now with that 16-month clause. I agree we need a float plane dock. I agree we need a net landing space. I read the last Harbor Commission minutes all about the float, and I was so excited to see even the encouragement of maybe a herring fishery coming back and expanding float plane dock. So I'm not in favor, I'm not against any of those improvements and hopefully even better situation in our harbor. But I also feel like, as is Alaska Department of Fish and Game, the US Coast Guard, our fuel suppliers, the US Forest Service, these are all entities in our community that we rely on for a lot of things in terms of revenue and taxes, and I think that this is a very good compromise that will not affect the grants or us moving forward with our harbor improvements. And I think it shows a good faith effort by the city to continue good partnerships without affecting our bottom line.
Councilmember Jones?
Yeah, I'll be obviously supporting the motion to refer to staff. I do think that there is a need to have the net mending float conversation, and there is a rationale to have that prior to moving this lease forward. We have a resolution that is on its way to council from the Harbor Commission, passed unanimously, to have us evaluate saving the existing, and it's in reality, it's real, it's sitting down there right now. In 2017, we had a quote from P&D, I believe it was, for $350,000 to completely rehab and repair the existing airplane dock. The 2022 PADP project included a net mending float. The 2023 project included one until there was a special meeting, and all of the conversations for months had involved there being one. And then all of a sudden there was a special meeting, we were told it's not in there anymore, it's a pass or not pass discussion, you can't add anything back in. It was passed because of course there's still a lot of really good merit in the project, and I still support the project, but that's what the catalyst was for this resolution about saving the existing float before it gets taken to the dump. Obviously, costs have gone up since 2017. There's a good chance it would cost more than $350,000 right now. It might be $700,000. It's not going to be the $6 million that was in the PADP project for the net mending float, which was the quote that I was told earlier today. As far as funding, there was just released on May 8th, 2023, that communities are receiving $1,027,000 from the 2020 and 2018 Copper River Chinook and Sockeye salmon disaster. Yes, those funds are not in our account today. This is still just a draft plan, and so there's going to be a final draft, and it's probably about 1.5 years, 2 years away from actually getting a check. Cordova is going to get the lion's share of that $1,027,000 because Cordova processes the lion's share of the gillnet fishery fish. These are funds that are coming down the pike that I think could be suitable to leverage as a match with a tier 2 to build a new net mending float or an airplane dock or rehabilitate the existing one. I don't think it's out of the realm of reality to, when the contractors pull the piles, to tow it over and tie it up. Maybe we don't make it fit for duty or whatever, but we can save that dock and repair it down the road when these funds come through. I just feel like this is a conversation that needs to be had prior to us agreeing to a lease that would prohibit us from relocating the existing float into that location. A 16-month period is going to prohibit us from saving the existing airplane float.
The existing airplane float has been deemed unrepairable by the project engineers, and I know, I don't even know how to have a conversation around that, other than to pay people, engineers, money to do an evaluation of that structure to see if it's fit. And there's just some expensive work that needs to be done to allow that move to happen.
Councilmember Baylor on the motion to refer.
Yeah, well, this has been some good information. If the question was asked, but really wasn't answered, although in a way you could answer it, the question was asked of the planner, would this be harmful to interfere with Shoreside in their facility to close, or because that 16-month clause give us, and we move that if that's a problem. So that'd be, just on the record, I'd like Shoreside issue addressed, please.
Kevin, you've got that.
Yeah, so based on the preliminary designs, it showed that I don't remember the exact number, but there was more than 100 feet between where the shoreside dock would be and the Forest Service dock. If once we are granted the award, or awarded the grant, and we then move into the design stage with an engineer like we've done with the South Harbor, and it's determined that there is a conflict, then we invoke the 16-month termination clause, and they would be out before construction started.
Okay, thank you. That seems reasonable to me. Is there a reason that we fenced this out for 20 years and not 10 years? Or does it really make a difference with that 16-month clause?
Yeah, I didn't think the length of the lease mattered because we had the 16-month clause. A longer term lease allows, staff to not have to renegotiate this every couple of years. I enjoy working with the Forest Service, but I'll just say that the lease negotiations has been one of the least smooth interactions with them that I've had. No, that's nothing towards Steve or anybody, it's a different office completely, so just want to put that out there. But yeah, really, with this is a 16-month lease. It's a 20-year term, but it's a 16-month lease at any time that we decide it.
Okay, Councilman.
Locking down a lease rate for 20 years doesn't seem like a very, unless there's some automatic increases in there, it doesn't seem like that's a very smart move on our part. Why would you lock something in for 20 years? Because you know the prices and costs are going to go up.
Is the rate locked in for 20 years? Or is it like our other leases and
I just want to confirm this before I answer this, but
So just to kind of put a little background to you around it, the Forest Service owns the building, it owns the dock, and it owns the piers that the dock is attached to. And what they're leasing is the dirt, basically, it's a land lease. So I just want to be really clear, it doesn't include additional infrastructure.